Welcome to MAP, the bi-weekly market access podcast hosted by me, Dr. Stefan Walzer. I am the innovator of Market Access 4.0 and a health economist by training and working in the fields of market access, reimbursement, pricing, and health economics since 2004. Discover Market Access 4.0 and unveil the future with our innovative solutions. Max Insights, our fast and easy AI-based reimbursement planning platform. Dobo, our new revolutionizing way of creating reimbursement dossiers across the globe with the first and only dossier writing AI bot. Cubo, our new AI-based objection handling platform. And Waffle, train with Waffle's virtual reality genius in an immersive environment and with an AI-based counterpart. We are Market Access 4.0. So check out our website, marketaccess4-0.com. And now let's dive into the current discussions, processes, and trends in market access across the globe. So welcome to another episode of the Market Access podcast. Today I have, I would say also special guests. I have Anja Pownell, who is, I would say, another great AMNOG expert. So welcome, Anja, to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. And I've been listening to your show. I've been a fan for several years, so it's really great to be on it myself. I feel very honored. Thanks.
That's perfect. Thank you, Anja. But I think before jumping into the topic, and of course, we'll speak quite a bit now around AMNOG and the experience and everything around it. But maybe you can just spend a couple of words on yourself that whoever does not know you yet, will at least know you after the episode.
Sure, thanks very much. My name is Anja Pownell, and I've been working in consulting for about 12 years now. And I've started really from the basics. I didn't really have much background in market access or so. I studied biochemistry, but then I joined a really great consultancy. And you will hear that I'm a native German. So I was put quite early on all the Germany projects. And that's really how I came to understand the German market inside out. And for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been freelancing and really supporting a lot of different businesses in their questions around the GBA and AMNOG. This
is perfect. And I think whoever does not know it yet or hasn't seen it yet, I think I also like a lot your bite-sized learning publications in a way on LinkedIn. So it's very short, very crisp, very to the point. So, and I think this is also where and how we want to maybe try to have the episode today. So we'll go through some, let's say, components of AMNOG where we probably both thought it would be worthwhile to speak about. It will not be so much about, let's say, the kind of process, what probably everybody knows already. And whoever doesn't know it, I think there are some podcast series available. There are some bite-sized learnings available. So feel free as well to use whatever is then also available after you have listened to that episode. But I would really like to directly jump into maybe the first one. And I think the overall theme around it is probably more kind of like market access mythbuster. So I think when we speak with clients, with people from probably different roles and different parts of the world, I think there's still a couple of, let's say, myths which are still alive, I would say, around market access in Germany. So I have a couple of those as well in mind, but maybe you could as well just bring up to some you have maybe experienced in the last couple of years. So what is the biggest myth about market access in Germany that especially maybe pharma executives still believe? And then obviously as well, why is it wrong?
Yeah, so what I hear quite often or what I'm getting asked about is the GBA, which is the German HTA body, making reimbursement decisions. And maybe linked to it that the GBA decision of no additional benefit means no reimbursement. And we hear that quite often, maybe from US companies also that maybe have never launched in Germany before, or also more global teams. And you really can't blame them because in Europe, there are a lot of HTA bodies which do restrict reimbursement and they do make reimbursement decisions. But this is really where Germany is different here because the German decision maker, the GBA, does not make reimbursement decisions. Really, reimbursement is giving for the population that is covered in the label, and that's from the day of launch. So there are very few exceptions, maybe a handful of exceptions where the GBA has restricted reimbursement to a small population, and all of them were in one indication, which is hypercholesterolemia. So if you're not really working in that indication, you don't have to worry about reimbursement restrictions or negative decisions made by the GBA affecting reimbursement. the GBA is now still very important because their decision affects the price in the end. So again, it's different to other markets. It's not affecting reimbursement, but it really is still very important to consider the German decision makers because it has a massive impact on the price, which then can have a knock-on effect on prices in other markets.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, to be honest, I mean, it's a very good myth, I think, what you just brought up. And I mean, a lot of times, I think this has maybe as well the kind of beginning when everybody speaks about subgrouping or niching or slicing, what the GBA is doing actually, but it is not like in other countries and with other HTA bodies, especially across, let's say, Europe, where HTA bodies or the other kind of decision makers then use that in order to exclude patient and patient groups from reimbursement. This is different. And that's, I think, why it's really important to understand the GBA is rather giving the kind of, let's say, level of added benefit, which is then just the basis for the price negotiation, meaning it can obviously have an impact, and it can also have an impact if you want still to have your product available in Germany, but it's not like in other countries where you suddenly get the red card, meaning a showstopper directly and immediately because there's no reimbursement at all. I think that's a very important point. I agree.
But I'm interested, you mentioned that you also had some stores. So what is something that you maybe come across, some misconceptions that you hear?
Yeah, it's a good one. And I mean, I can agree, I think, with the whole kind of subgrouping. I heard that as well a couple of times already. Another one, what I hear quite a lot of times is basically the dossier would just need to be submitted to the GBA 3 months after EMA approval.
Oh.
Which is obviously, which could be really a big mistake, right? Because it needs to be submitted at the day of commercialization, meaning whenever the product is commercially available in Germany, the dossier would need to be with the GBA in the system. So that's, I think, very important. I think that kind of 3 months, I can remember that in the very early days of AMNOG, or maybe even in the pre-AMNOG time, that was some of the discussions. But this is still a kind of myth. I mean, which a lot of time we still need to correct. So, and it's very difficult to get that out of the mind of the different decision makers within the pharmaceutical company. I mean, and another one, which I would say is around my top 3 myths around AMNOG, is also that AMNOG is only applicable for outpatient products. So everything what is being used in a hospital does not need to go through AMNOG. And I think that has never really been true, even though that I think there were some exceptions in the early days. But I think also a couple of years ago, I think the decision or the policymakers basically made it even more clear that basically every new innovative product, meaning not being available before 2011, meaning before AMNOG was introduced and has kind of new patent protection, needs to go through AMNOG in a short way. There are some exceptions further, but I think that's also a big myth.
Yeah. One aspect that maybe is a little bit different is I say everything is kind of reimbursed from the day of launch, but there are some products, lifestyle products, which are exempt from reimbursement. And there's a bit of a difference to other markets, specifically on obesity treatment. Mm-hmm. So we have other markets where they are reimbursed, but for Germany, that's really seen a lifestyle choice, a lifestyle drug. So those are exempt from reimbursement, which is quite a big difference.
Oh yeah, that's true. And I mean, there are as well processes to potentially lift those kind of exemptions, but that's a long way to go. And it's quite difficult before even then still AMNOG would kick in. I think that's a very good and important point as well. But I think that brings me already a bit, let's say, around myths, and that's more around planning and everything, maybe to the second topic, which is, let's say, surviving AMNOG. Mm-hmm. And of course, as you are really good in simplifying the AMNOG processes. I mean, what would be your key 3 survival tips in a way for pharma companies that they could really survive the German AMNOG? And what could they maybe even do better if you have seen that some have not followed those 3 recommendations?
Yeah. So I'm first mentioning the 3 steps and then I can discuss them in a bit more detail. But I think first of all, really consider the German market access requirements early. And if you think that's early, it's always earlier, it's even better. The second point is to be prepared to submit your dossier. And you've already alluded to that. It really needs to be at the day of launch. You need to submit it. And then the third step is really to prepare for the price negotiations as well, which follow on after the GBA decision. So coming back to the first point is to consider really the AMNOG and the GBA requirements early on. Ideally, you do that when you're planning your phase 3 trial. So I know sometimes it's not possible anymore, but if that's at all possible, do it as early as possible. And here you really want to get all the information you can from the kind of German system. So in the best case scenario, you consult the GBA directly. And that's a process that's totally possible. You can request a consultation slot with them. Again, you have to do that early because they get booked up like several months in advance. But really, you can use that consultation to ask the key decision maker, which is the GBA, directly. Ask them, what do they think will be the comparator that you have to compare to? What will be the endpoints, or do they think your endpoints are patient relevant and therefore will consider them, or do they not consider yours because they see them as not being patient relevant? Are there any issues with your trial population? Do they think that the trial population actually matches the expected label? Are there any subgroups that they may want to see? So really understanding that as early as possible is the best to prepare for it. And I said before phase 3 trial, maybe it's not possible. Maybe you can't actually amend the phase 3 trial anymore. It's already signed off, but it's still good to understand what you will be faced with when you submit to the German market and see if there's anything that you can mitigate and that you can still do to address those gaps. For example, you might not have been aware of subgroups that the GBA wants to see, but you actually have them included in your trial, so you can conduct that subgroup analysis. That's a possibility to still meet those gaps or match those gaps. Likewise, there might be not anything you can do, but at least you will kind of anticipate what the outcome then will be, and you can include that in your pricing strategy or prepared, or in your launch strategy, even if you think it has such a bad knock-on effect that you might want to delay launch in Germany, which I should never recommend because that's obviously not good for the patient population in Germany, but that might be a strategy to consider really. So just think of the German market as early as possible. And then that leads me to the second step, which is submitting your dossier. And it might sound like a tick box exercise or a small process, but really, yes, there are templates. But this whole dossier, it's several thousand pages long. It might be shorter for an orphan drug, hundreds of pages, but it is a massive task. And it takes about a year to prepare that. And especially now thinking that you might be a product that also has to go through the European Joint Clinical Assessment, there might be an additional burden that your team has to handle at the same time, because unfortunately, it's still additional work. I know the JCA was invented to save some time, but that's not really the case yet. So yes, you can refer to some sections in your dossier, but it still has a lot of additional burden. So just see if your team is even capable of doing that in that short time. Otherwise, think of getting other resources in outside of help to really prepare your dossier, because it needs to be submitted when you actually launch on the German market. And lastly, prepare for the price negotiations. So this really includes the whole pricing strategy. What is the price that we want to launch with? So I haven't mentioned yet, but when you launch on the German market, you can freely set your price. This price will be in place for the first 6 months, and then it will be amended to the negotiated price. So really, what is your expectation for this price that you freely set? And what is your expectation for the negotiated price? What arguments do we have to support that price in the negotiations? And what is the knock-on effect of that potential German price on other markets? So other markets are still using the German price as a reference. There is now the option to keep the German price confidential. That doesn't seem to be favored by anyone really in the whole system. So even pharmaceutical companies saying it's such a massive administrative burden around that not many will consider using this. So really the German price is still publicly available. So just consider that in your pricing strategy, and then prepare for the negotiations and practice them as well. And I know that you, Stefan, you have really nice offerings around those negotiations on the training on that. So those would be my key 3 steps really to prepare to get through the German market access.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think the key thing is probably prepare.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, as you said, I think there are a couple of hurdles in there. I think one for sure. I mean, if you can get a kind of slot with the GBA with an early consultation, you would need to really think about that early on, because they're really, as you said as well, booked up. I think I've just had a look yesterday. We're now in April 2025. And I think there are still some few slots available. I think at end of June, beginning of July. but then it's basically already booked until January next year, which is, which is in 8 months of time. I mean, this is really where you then are basically in trouble if you really want and need some feedback from the system. I think the other part is for sure, yes, the dossier. I think that's an important consideration. I mean, it takes long. You need to have an alliance kind of submission also around JCA. And I would even add there, plan your European launches as well, which is probably a bit more around, let's say, the price negotiation. But I mean, if you want to optimize your price across Europe, I think it's quite good to know when to expect the different kind of price negotiation outcomes in the various countries. A lot of times this is, let's say, straightforward, but not for every product, not for every company. So that's at least something keeping in mind. And ultimately, because you have as well mentioned a couple of times, the internal preparedness also includes obviously the kind of best alternative to no agreement, meaning what is your final lowest price you could accept, not only in Germany, but also in others, but of course, especially also for the German price negotiation. I think have that discussion early on, because I think once you are in that kind of, let's say, stressful situation of the negotiation, not in the room, but just within the company, I think you should already have made up your mind in an ideal, let's say, case. So I would agree with these three kind of steps where probably the preparedness is the overall kind of theme for that.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't underline as more strongly preparedness is everything that you need.
Yeah, perfect. So so I mean, we have discussed, let's say, quite a bit now around AMNOG and the kind of specific pieces on this one. I mean, another hot topic, which is obviously linked as well to not only to AMNOG, but I think generally also to our kind of general environment, right? Which is AI. I mean, AI is also revolutionizing actually the market access sphere. We have had a couple of discussions where some people also fear a bit that their role, their functions are maybe obsolete in maybe the next couple of years, where I'm a bit skeptical. I think AI might rather be, let's say, further support to what we're currently doing. But independent of that, could you be thinking of a process maybe in pharma that will be obsolete maybe around 5 years' time because of AI? Anything you have in mind?
Very good question. I really hope that there wouldn't be one that's completely obsolete. Like, I agree with you that hopefully AI can support us, but not replace us. Mm-hmm. It's hard to tell because I can't even predict what AI will be able to do in 5 years' time. Like, I know what it is doing, and like daily it's becoming better, and I'm using it myself quite a lot for mostly personal reasons. But I think it can certainly help with paths that it's certainly good at. So that's gathering a lot and reviewing a lot of data and synthesizing that data, and then also create content from that data or from other data that you feed into it. So I think those are two big processes that AI is just super good at. I'm sure you need to proofread and double check absolutely everything at the moment. You don't want to rely on it completely. But yeah, I can see how it can speed up processes that you're doing now in various tasks. So, for example, landscape assessments, competitive analysis. It could probably be reviewing clinicaltrials.gov, any investor announcements on competitors, and really bring that all together much quicker than any researcher, any analyst is doing at the moment. It probably, or I know that you're already looking into this, it will help you prepare dossiers, so your global value dossier or also your AMNOG dossier, based on templates. You can really tell them this is the information that needs to go in there, find that in my internal information and fill it in. So all of these tasks that need a lot of data and synthesizing them, that's what AI really I think can support us with. You could probably even imagine that maybe that's more, but outside of Germany, it could identify inputs for economic models. Mm-hmm. You might have certain values that you think just gather on the internet. Is there any input on a valuable source for that certain factor that I need in my economic model? And then you still probably want to validate it with clinicians or so on, but it could give you a starting point for some of these inputs. And maybe it can even help you have these interactions with KOLs, advisory boards, support that in some way. So those are my thoughts. But I really hope that it wouldn't completely replace us, but just facilitate our work and make our lives easier.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I mean, I'm still, let's say, skeptical that let's say the given processes what we're currently doing are getting obsolete. I think we're probably getting more efficient. We might hopefully get more into, let's say, strategic discussions again, because we might have then a bit more time to do that, and maybe AI could help us as well, not only freeing up the time, but also delivering some, let's say, initial ideas, for example, right? I mean, you mentioned a couple of those, let's say, parts, but it's also around systematic literature search, which could be probably done more efficiently. So we could really think and discuss about the details and the items of it. I think it's also around health economic modeling. I mean, there are already papers out that you can use language models to create models in R even more efficiently. Or, of course, I mean, everything around preparation, which could also be, for example, screening endpoints in trials or results out of HTA decisions, right? I mean, why, how, what, and I think this could be really, let's say, available in a pretty much fast way. But I think a key thing around being obsolete is probably also what and how the political will might maybe drive that. I think if there is a push from the political perspective to have those processes more automized, which I, to be honest, do not see really in Europe happening, not in the next 5 years. Yeah, what happens afterwards, let's see, but I would not even see that probably in the next 10 years, which could be a good thing, could also be a not so good thing. But let's just see. But I think if this is not somewhere on the radar screen, then I think to be obsolete is not something we'll be discussing. Then it's really more, as you also said, probably more support for us as humans in order to get things done in a more efficient and better, probably, and hopefully a better way.
Yeah. No, you really hope that we are more efficient. And you talk about time savings. I'm always a bit cynical on saying, well, you just get more workload than put on you. You don't really have additional time. But hopefully, at least for a period before the West catches up, you have more time to think strategically and have these discussions. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a good point, right? I mean, if you have more time, you might get more on your plate. So that could obviously happen as well. Yeah, I agree. But let's just see how this will really, let's say, work out. I think that's something we can see in the next couple of very few years. Perfect. Anja, I want to thank you. I think that was a very lively, a very active kind of discussion. It was basically, as I also have seen your bite-sized learning pieces being published, quite clear, quite crisp. So that was perfect. Thanks a lot for your time. And of course, looking forward to your next publications as well in terms of bite-sized learnings.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
AMNOG and its myths. I think this is probably the more kind of theme I discussed today with Anja, also an AMNOG expert. And I think what is really interesting is that I think the processes are in the meantime, should be rather probably in the meantime quite clear, but still there are a couple of things which are very difficult to change in the mindset of a lot of executives, which is the 3 months after EMA approval dossier submission, which is not true. AMNOG is only available or needs to be applicable to outpatient products, which is also not true. And for sure, there's also a couple of further myths, which are, let's say, important, but I think it's also really important to link it maybe to what Anja said also around the second part, which is preparedness. I think if you are really prepared for the submission, for the process, for the discussion and the negotiation, also AMNOG can be a successful kind of endeavor for you as a company. Important still is to probably have a further mindset on JCA, which is obviously linked before AMNOG, before the AMNOG submission, and what I also mentioned beforehand, the importance of the European alignment, so when to submit, which kind of price to expect and also assess, and similar kind of themes. Finally, of course, AI is a given driving force, where, of course, also what Anja mentioned, there are a couple of AI tools already available in systematic literature searches, in dossier writing, and a couple of further parts. So utilize that in order to get prepared and then also survive AMNOG. That was an episode of MAP, the market access podcast provided by Mars Market Access and Pricing Strategy, which is your healthcare consultancy in the German-speaking markets. MAP is available every second week with a new episode, so watch out. And in case you might have questions, contact me directly and or visit our website on www.marketaccess-pricingstrategy.de.